Right, welcome back to the Roblox Scripting series. In this video we're going to be looking at if statements and for loops. So, first thing we're going to do is head to a script in Server Script Service. I'm just going to make one there for us. And so we're looking at if statements and for loops today. So, just a brief explanation at first. What we're going to do is look at what if statements are. So if statements are essentially just checking whether something is true or not, checking a condition. So for example, checking if the player's passed the finish line or if the player's jumped on a block or something of the sort. And then for for loops, it's just looping through something a certain number of times. So first of all, if statements. I'm just going to do a little example just to hopefully get the base knowledge down. So first of all, I'm going to make just a variable. So local is true equals false. Boolean, we've done that before, don't worry about that for now. Now it's time for the if statement. So what I want you to write is if is true equals true, then print hello. And before I explain any of this, what I'm going to do is just run the game, and you can see nothing gets printed. Why is that? Because is true isn't true. So essentially what this is doing is it's checking, is this variable equivalent to this value? So does this variable have this value? It doesn't, but if I change that to false, you'll see that it does in fact print something out. So again, we'll go back. What's this saying? It's saying if this statement is true. So not in the sense of is the Boolean true, is this correct? So is this variable equal to false? And it is. So it's going to run this code inside it. Now, it doesn't just have to be based off booleans, which might be a little bit confusing, but we can do something like we could do some maths. So local number 1 equals 1, local number 2 equals 5, and then we can do if number 1 plus number 2 is equal to 6, then print correct answer. And what this is going to do again is check and see if this is true, and again it's printing that out because it's checking if this is correct. So if the sum of number 1 and number 2 is 6, it's going to run this code, but if I change this, it's not. So essentially, again, we're going to go over it again. What an if statement does is it checks if the conditions provided are correct. So if you're comparing variables, it'll check if that number or if that boolean or if that string is equivalent to whatever you put here. Right? Okay, so now we're going to move on to something a little bit sort of deeper into if statements. We're going to do else if and else. So what these do is it provides extra conditions for what to do if this first statement isn't correct. So you're going to run into points when you're scripting where this isn't always right, but you want to do something else. So for example, I'm going to use else for this, and I'm going to say print wrong answer. And essentially what else is a fail-safe. You're saying if they've got it right, then you want to print the correct answer, but if they've got it wrong, you still want to let them know that it's been processed, but it's the wrong answer. Now this can be used a lot. This can be used in testing. For example, if you're running something through and you're thinking the code's not working, so you're adding an else to check if it's getting that far, for example. But it can also be used, like I'm doing here, to say you got the answer wrong. But essentially what else is this bit of code will run if this statement isn't equal to 6. So if this turns around and says no, because number 2 and number 2 isn't equal to 6, it will run then this piece of code. And one more thing we're going to cover on if statements is else if. So I'm just going to add else if number 2 plus number 1 plus number 2 equals 5, then I'm going to print you're close. So what is else if? Well, else if is pretty much the same as saying else, but giving it a condition. So you can have both else and else if in one if statement, but what you want to do is put else if in between else and if. Getting very confusing, but essentially this is saying check this statement, is that true? No. Then run on to this statement, is that correct? Yes, run this code. Or alternatively, if this one isn't correct, run this code. But you can use as many else ifs if you want as you want. So else if number 1 plus number 2 is less than 5 or more than 6, then print 2 high. So you can have as many else ifs as you want, but how it works is it runs in chronological order from the top to the bottom, and it checks whether these statements are true. So again, we'll go through it like the code does. Number 1 and number 2, 1 and 4. Is 1 plus 4 6? No. Move on to the next one. Is 1 and 4 5? Yes, it is, so it's going to print this. But if we then change this to 7, is 1 plus 7 6? No. Is 1 plus 7 5? No. Is 1 plus 7 bigger than 6? Yes, so it's going to print 2 high. And then finally we're going to go again, 1 and 2. Is 1 and 2 6? No. Is 1 and 2 5? No. Is 1 and 2 bigger than 6? No. Print this. So it's just checking whether these conditions are true. Alright? Right, so now we're going to move on to for loops. So essentially what for loops are is just running through something a number of times. Now there are different types of for loops. You can use it to run through a table, or you can use it to run through something a certain number of times. So I'm just going to write those out quickly. So you can do for I equals 1, 5, 1, do. And you can also have, in fact, let me make a table quickly. Right, so you might have seen one of these or both of these before, but I'm going to explain to you what these mean and what happens. So I'm going to start with the for I loop here. This is a loop that runs a certain number of times, stated just in the code, and it will only run this number of times. And this loop, I call it an IV loop because it runs index and value, but it will loop through a table. So this one first of all, for I equals 1, 5, 1, do. What does this mean? Well, what you're saying here is you want this for loop to start on the number 1, finish on the number 5, and have increments of 1. So what this is going to do is it's going to loop through the code 5 times. And what it's going to do is it's going to give this I value each time a different value. So the first value is 1, as it's given me there, and then the last value is 5. But what it does is each time it runs through, if I print I here and show you, if I run this script quickly, it's going to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because every time it runs through this loop, the I value changes. It goes the first time 1, second time 2, third time 3, fourth time 4, fifth time 5. But you can change this. So if I did, for example, for 1, 10, 2, or for 0, 10, 2, do, it's going to go from 0 to 10, but it's going to go in steps of 2. So it's going to go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So if we print this out here, there you go, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Right, so that's for I loops. Now we're going to go on to these kind of loops. So if I just get rid of this quickly. What these loops are going to be used for when you're scripting is looping through folders, for example, looping through tables, just looping through big bits of data that you don't know how many children, for example, in a folder there's going to be. So you want to be able to loop through it however many pieces of data there are. So what these loops do is you have an index and a value. Now these are two variables you're creating in this for loop. You can have them called whatever, you can have them called that, and you can have it called that. It doesn't matter, but for simplicity I am going to call them index and value. So how this works is it loops through whatever you put in this pairs here, right? So it will loop through this table. Similarly to how you do it with the for I equals loop that we've just done, index is going to be the number that you're on in the table. So if, in fact, I'm going to change this table, so I'm just going to go hi, hello, hello, what's going on? Right, so here I've just created a table that's almost like greetings, for example. And what this is going to do, this loop, so for index, value, index is the number. So it's going to loop through this table. The first time index is going to be 1, second time it's going to be 2, third time it's going to be 3, fourth time it's going to be 4, fifth time it's going to be 5. Right? Exactly the same as the for I loop. It's going up for each time it goes through the table. But then the value, you've got a value here. Didn't have this in the last one. What is this? Well, you'll notice that we have strings in this table. So what the value is, as I'm sure you can guess, is what this piece of data actually is. Now, it doesn't matter whether that's a number, whether it's a boolean, whether it's an object, doesn't matter what it is. That is what this value is going to be given each time you loop through. So I'm just going to print index and value here, and then run my script, and you will see, if I just make this a little bit bigger, 1, hi, 2, hello there, 3, yellow, 4, what's up, 5, what's going on. So what this has done here, if I just stop this quickly, what it's doing is it's just looping through each value in this table. So it's just going, right, what's the first index in this table? Number 1, hi. Number 2, hello there. So all it's giving you is the number that it's on and the value that it's found. And that's all it's doing. So for example, you could have a folder in your workspace, for example, and it could be called parts. And you could have all the parts in your game in that folder. And you could just loop through all the parts and just have like a little script that prints something whenever one of the parts is touched. It's that simple. It just lets you run through a script and have some code that's run based on a set number of values, rather than going, I want to print table 1, and then I want to print table 2, and then I want to print table 3. So instead of doing it the very hard and very long way, it allows you to just do it all in one go and just say, I want this code to repeat based on the values that it get as I go through this table. So that is for loops and if statements. Have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.